everyone. Welcome to another episode of Vega Insights presented by Vega Imaging Informatics. I'm Al Kappel, Director of Sales, and with me today, of course, is Luke Bideaux, our founder and CEO. Today, we're going to dive into Vega Pro Managed Services. Now, we could speak several hours about all the different services that we provide with this, but let's narrow our focus for a quick overview. So let's jump right in. Luke, what are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing with imaging practices today?
Yeah, I think, a lot of practices would say their biggest challenge today is a shortage of highly trained professionals. And they'd probably start with the radiologists. We hear that all the time. There's a shortage of radiologists. There's not enough radiologists to maintain our workflow, and so we're forced to outsource some of that work to telerad companies. But it's not just the radiologists we have a hard time with. We have a hard time pretty much from end to end getting capable front desk staff and schedulers and technologists. I would argue, though, that possibly the biggest scarcity in terms of imaging professionals today is the imaging informatics professionals. If we look at, for instance, comparing radiologists to imaging informatics professionals, there's over 300,000 radiologists around the world. And in the US, we have over 30,000 board certified radiologists. In the world of imaging informatics, as of 2024, the American Board of Imaging Informatics published the numbers were at about 1,100 CIIPs. That number is actually down, Al, from 2015 when we had nearly 1,200 CIIPs. We've actually gone down, from 2015, 10 years later, to where we are today. Whereas with the radiologists, it's steadily increased year after year, going back, many years, including the last 10 years.
Yeah, given the need for imaging informatics professionals, you would think that number would continue to increase.
It is a head scratcher, right? The technology advancements we've seen over the last 10 years and all of the amazing innovations with AI and everything certainly has driven the demand for imaging informatics professionals up. I don't think anybody would argue that we need less experts in imaging informatics now than we did 10 years ago. So we do have a problem with a shortage of knowledgeable imaging informatics professionals, not only in the US, but I'd say even especially globally. And so why the shortage? When we look at the radiologist side of it, I think we're being told that, well, less people want to go into being a radiologist because of AI. I hear that all the time. And they might be true, there's concern about that, but it's not true that the shortage of radiologists is due to AI. In fact, it's really hard to get into a radiology program and become a radiologist. If they loosened up the requirements and let more people into the educational programs, we'd have more radiologists. Interestingly, that's not the case with imaging informatics professionals. Anybody can take the board exam as long as they put themselves on the right path. There's no limit to the number of people that can become certified imaging informatics professionals. And so there does seem to be some shortages in terms of individuals that want to get certified. Now, there's definitely going to be a lot of imaging informatics professionals out there that are not certified, and there may be a whole separate discussion we could have about why those professionals don't see the need to get certified. And I'm sure there's many capable IIPs that are not certified out there. But as a certified imaging informatics professional, the one thing I learned going through the certification was that it does require you to brush up in the areas that you're weaker in. And I feel as though there are many non-certified imaging informatics professionals that do have weaknesses. They're not as well-rounded as they could be, and they choose not to brush up in those areas, and therefore they're not equipped to go for the certification. And it's really a problem. I can speak firsthand to my time when I was a director of imaging informatics. I was supporting around 30 radiologists, and I was certified at the time. I had a team of some other members that were not certified, and I think I was lucky to have them on my team, but they had their specialties. They had their areas where, they were focused in certain areas. And I think a lot of practices have that where, you've got Bill on the team and he's outstanding when it comes to desktop support or HL7 integrations. But if the need comes up where we've got a new image sharing initiative, we need Bill to run that project, it's like, whoa, Bill doesn't run projects. He's not a project manager. And so we'll have some other project manager run the image sharing project. But that person's not an IIP, and so the project goes off the rails. So there's definitely a need for proficient, well-rounded imaging informatics professionals. And really the only way to prove that as a professional is to get certified. And that at least proves you have this foundational level of skills in imaging informatics. Doesn't mean that you're prepared to do everything, but it does show a certain foundation that you've proven. So
Yeah, and you're on the right track, right?
you've got your foundation, and now you're prepared to really specialize in the areas that you want to or need to for your current role. So I think there's a major challenge out there with practices trying to find these types of well-rounded IIPs. And where do the practices go when they have the shortage? If you look at what they do for radiologists, if they have a shortage, they'll just contact their preferred telerad company and problem solved, right? They just
Right,
ship those
right.
studies, whatever overage they need help with, they ship those off and get the reports back, and it's problem solved. When it comes to imaging informatics professionals, it's not quite that easy. That's one of the offerings that we hope to solve here at Vega, sort of a tele-imaging informatics professional type of model where we can come in and either supplement your team or provide a fully managed experience, which we're really excited to share with any practices that are interested to learn more. But historically, that hasn't always been available. And so I think practices have just been limping along with the resources that they have, and they've gotten themselves into some challenging situations. So that's basically my take on, probably the biggest challenge we're seeing today in imaging practices.
Yeah, great. Great. What about so the people that are, interested and looking at things like what's an ROI for us? Those
Right.
kind of things. Let's look at your costs versus our need and, is it worth it? Let's validate that, right?
I think the ROI conversation is very important. However, it needs to be looked at from a different lens than you would, let's say, for radiologists. Do we need to hire another radiologist or not? That's a pretty cut and dry analysis. When you look at the IIP discussion, do we need help in that area? I think it's really an ROI that's based off of a few different things. The main one is efficiency gains. Can we get an ROI based on these IIPs, uh, implementing and optimizing systems that can make us more efficient? Now, with all of the innovation that's happening in I believe that there are many efficiencies that could be gained given the right expertise on just being aware of what's out there and then being able to implement them properly and support them. But a lot of those opportunities go by the wayside because practices don't have the IIPs in place to even begin assessing what they could do.
Yeah.
Um, and so
I
there's
mean,
this opportunity cost that's missed out on
yeah, I
how
was
they
just say,
do
look
it.
at all the customers that we presently have that are, they're so busy they can't take on a project that they've been hoping to get done. It's been on their plate for so long. However, if they outsource that to, a company like us, which they do, they can continue to work on their day to day and have us manage that project for them. Whether it's short term or long term, right? Depending on
Exactly.
their needs. Everybody's got different requirements.
And another thing, Al, is it's not even just going after new systems and spending more money on new systems to try to get efficiency gains. What I see all the time is organizations have existing systems, but they're not optimized properly. And so they've just dug themselves into a hole with these systems where their workflows are not efficient. Radiologists hanging protocols are all over the place.
Just going to mention hanging protocols. Yeah.
The integrations, you got people, opening 3, 4 different systems trying to get stuff done. It's really It's really bad in a lot of cases. Just getting a little help with the systems you already have to optimize them the best you can before you start looking ahead to what new systems could we bring in. You
Yeah.
got to look at what you have right now. Um, and I think there's something to be said about bringing in a third party for that additional layer of validation. There's so many practice administrators that they don't know. And so they're hearing it from their IT guy or their PACS admin, that they're doing their best and this is the best we can do. But unless you bring in that third party, non-biased opinion, you'll never know if that is the actual truth or if there's more to the story here. So unless you're doing that type of checks and balances, I don't know how you're confident in what you're doing as a administrator that's not an IT or imaging informatics person.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Even something as simple as an initial assessment, an overall assessment of a system, right? Their
And
whole,
yeah,
their
and you
whole
can't go to the
workflow.
vendors. They're just going to try to push you towards their solution. So where do you turn? We're excited to be able to bring those types of, you know, consultation services and just mini assessments to just get started, and then, we can build from there.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
going back to the ROI discussion, I think it's not only just about efficiency. How can we pay for this person to through efficiency to offset the costs of the IIP or the team of IIPs? There's also a lot more to it in terms of quality and just alignment with laws and best practices. So unfortunately, I've seen firsthand a lot of organizations that it's a slippery slope with the quality. They let some things slip because they just don't have the right people looking over the system. And before you know it, it's snowballed into a really bad situation where, they've been hit with penalties or hit with ransomware or,
Hmm.
and it's typically not just one small mistake that has happened. It's a lot of mistakes and things that have been overlooked for a long time, um, that's put them into these positions.
Culminates into a firestorm.
Yeah. So those that have been around the block a few times know what I'm talking about, where, you know, there are different levels of quality when it comes to imaging practices around the world. And it's typically the ones that prioritize quality that you see succeeding. You see them growing, you see them doing great. And so that just doesn't come out of nowhere. They've got the right people in place to put those quality improvements in practice. And the other thing I want to touch on is just there are laws pertaining to data management in the US, and around the globe there's other laws, but let's just focus on the US. Many people they're familiar with HIPAA. I want to reiterate that HIPAA is an act that has enacted laws over medical practices and how they maintain their medical records. So it's not just a suggestion or best practice. There are laws that imaging practices need to be in alignment with when it comes to managing their medical records. And imaging studies are considered medical records, just like anything else. So things such as medical record retention laws, every state has their own. And I'm surprised to see such a blatant disregard for these state retention laws when it comes to certain types of imaging, especially like point of care imaging or any imaging that's done outside of the radiology, cardiology space. I see
Hmm.
so much, just things that would never fly in a normal radiology environment where you're saving studies to flash drives and throwing them in a drawer or whatever the case may be. It's really concerning, and I think people forget like there are laws pertaining to these types of things. Um, and to take it a step further, besides just the bare minimum laws, there are so many wonderful best practices that are outlined in terms of radiology workflows and image management strategies and enterprise imaging strategies. You've got IHE frameworks, you've got ACR guidance, you've got guidance from SIM and HIMSS, and so many wonderful blueprints that are there for the taking if you've got the people that can understand them and put them into practice. But so many times, Al, it's like the Wild West. It's like they're trying to do it their way, and they don't have the expertise or the knowledge of the best practices in the first place. And so it's not for lack of trying, but they just don't have the right personnel in place to be doing the type of work that they're doing. I see it as a safety concern for the patients. I see it as a problem at the government level. Not really, it's not required to have a CIIP at your practice, which I think is a safety concern. And these practices, they have their laws that they need to abide by, but going beyond that and trying to hit best practices is not always at the forefront
Yeah.
of a lot of the practices mind. And so there's definitely a ton of room for improvement here, and we're excited to be a part of the movement to improve the quality and image management strategies that a practice is taking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for your insights, Luke. Greatly appreciated. I just want to let everybody know, Vega offers two levels of managed services. Our Vega Pro Admin Connect, which provides troubleshooting and problem solving beyond basic user queries, things like that. And then there's our Vega Pro Fully Managed experience, which provides more advanced technical support and system optimization services. So, I mean, there's a wide range of services with both offerings. My best suggestion is to visit our website at vegainformatics.com and then set up an initial consultation with us so we can explore the possibilities for your practice.